So, hello, my friends. The model that I've talked about a number of times about what's happening and as we go into this future is based upon kind of two tracks. And one of them is a dystopian track. This is the track to technocracy and where everything is controlled through technology by a very small number of people. And the whole, if you want a bumper sticker for that one, it's about control. You get bots in your brain, and everybody knows, and they know where you are all the time. They know what you're thinking. They can put thoughts in your mind, on and on and on. They control your body. They control your money. They control your travel. That's the clear kind of endpoint in the direction that this, Google, Facebook, etc. kind of track is going. And AI, if they use it the way a lot of people want to use it, will only exacerbate and accelerate that. The other track, call them a timeline if you'd like, is one toward the emergence of a new human and a new world. And this track presumes that, number one, that a significant group of humans have prepared themselves and raised their consciousness such that they are infused with a new energy that probably comes out of the center of the galaxy as well as the sun, that activates part of the 90+% of DNA that science doesn't understand what its function is. And in the process, what happens is that all kinds of new characteristics show up: manifestation, telepathy, reading auras, it's kind of intuitively, extraordinary kind of intuitional capabilities to be able to reach down and grab answers to about anything that you want. Hope and a number of other things. Not have to eat food. Ultimately, there's a number of these other things. The bumper sticker on that side is freedom. And what it is, and what that means is that this new human, this newly enabled human, can literally, through the kind of turning on these suppressed capabilities, this new human can replicate any and everything internally that the guys over on the dystopian side are selling as the benefits of technology. So, the technologists will tell you that when your brain is connected to the internet, then you have access to all of these databases and you can get all this information. Well, on the freedom side, you do that through intuition and your ability to kind of plumb down into the database of everything in existence. So there's this one track that says, we'll wire you up and fill you full of nanobots and monitor everything you got and control your life and give you a stipend every month to keep you going. But you belong to us and you are in our control, and we will use that. Part of the reason they're arguing, and that one of the things that's pushing that side of the equation, is this move toward artificial intelligence and other things that are eliminating traditional jobs. And so there's a place up there within 10 years, easily, maybe less, where, I don't know, Eric Schmidt said 80% of all of the jobs that existed about 8 years ago will be gone within a decade. Well, they'll probably not be gone within 2 years. But the point is that they're sweeping out all of the lower end of the kind of job hierarchy, the things that are repetitive that can be done over and over again, and even work their way up to attorneys and real estate agents and any number of other kind of things like that. Because as you know, is with ChatGPT and some of these other applications, they really start behaving like human beings, and all it does is get bigger and better rather rapidly as it embraces larger and larger databases that are being generated, and they feed on each other, and you learn from how other people. So that's the technology side. On the other side is the freedom side, where you have this expanded awareness of not only who you are, but also how things work. On the back end of that, of course, the new human starts to see themselves all differently because of this expanded awareness. And so they build a new world. And that new world, by definition, is significantly different than the present world that we live in. And so there's all kinds of things and aspects, if not all of the things and aspects of this new world, that are subject to change, subject to kind of fundamental change. It's really kind of an open-ended, everything's up for grabs, because the problems and the issues that we're going to go through in the next couple of 3 years are going to be significant enough that there's a goodly number of folks, including almost all of us that are out on the front end of this thing, we're going to say never again. I'm not going to have that one happen. And so there's going to be this kind of depression, like, how these people, you remember your grandparents and how they were affected by the depression, and how it just seared in their minds the way they looked at things and how they dealt with money and such. That will be the case out of the back end of this, but it'll be different. It's not that depression. They'll just say, we're not going back to those set of systems and mechanisms that we've had before. And so if you start to think about downstream at this new world that emerges, you say to yourself, to start with, well, all of the problems we have in the present world are, by definition, they're directly derivative of the way that we operate right now. It's our economy, our governments, our, everything. It's that's what gives us the world around us. And so if we're going to have a new world and it's going to operate in a fundamentally different way, then what you've got to have is a new set of kind of underlying kind of principles and mechanisms that support human activity in really quite different ways. And if you then kind of start to think across and say, so what might this new world work? How might it work, and how do you have to change things, and so on? What you come up with, or I do at least rather quickly, is that there are two principal kind of issues that need to be dealt with in this new world. Now, remember, the bumper sticker for this one is freedom. And the idea is that Humans have extraordinary kind of capabilities and possibilities, and that are presently suppressed, that are not full, fully utilized, they're not activated essentially in our present world. And so you say to yourself, well, what is it in this world that are the principal kind of constraints on the kind of full flowering of an individual and being able to do what they want to do and doing it as well as they can and unencumbered and becoming their full, their full self. That's freedom, right? That's the track. That is freedom. Freedom says you can do anything you want to do. And what is it that controls and constrains that? Well, there are two things, two fundamental things, and then they influence everything else. One of them is money. And the way we deal with and define and manipulate money. Because all of us, I don't know that I know anyone. I'm suppose that there are some people who, well, certainly the very rich, but relatively speaking, you're talking about 98% of the people on the planet circumscribe what they otherwise would like to do because they don't have the funds to be able to do it. And whether it starts way down at the bottom of the economic ladder, and all you're doing is eking out a living and working from hand to mouth and from paycheck to paycheck. And even if you work yourself up to being more successful, where you have more revenue that's coming in, you nevertheless, very much like the kind of the result of the depression, it colors the way you look at the life, and it colors the way you think of what you can and cannot do, because you're looking at prices all the time. You're looking at, you're always balancing in the back of your mind whether you can do this or not, or is this too much? Should you spend $140 for a motel room, or should you really look around a whole much more and see if you can get it down to about 130 or something like that? I mean, there's this built into us, these kinds of this kind of equation, and the equation is driven by the basic concept that the only thing that in any quantifiable way is valued in the way we live and operate on this planet is money. The only well-defined kind of system that keeps score of value is accounting systems, and the only thing they consider essentially is money. And so what that does is that it skews the whole system toward accumulating and trying to do your best to get as much money as you can so that you can get the freedom that you'd like. I mean, so many people spend their whole life working at jobs they don't like, only with hopes that they can retire and then they'll have enough money to live on to be able to then do what they really wanted to do. And that's the kind of the basic point. And that most of the people on this low end of the economic ladder are highly constrained by money, in part and largely in part because those on the higher end of the ladder are much better at accumulating and acquiring and building financial resources. And so that system doesn't value love and compassion and grandmothers that take care of your kids while you're working on the weekends or whatever, or any of the qualitative kind of aspects, the most important qualitative aspects of the humanness and of who we are in human terms. It's really quite clear that you can have a whole lot of money and have a really crappy life, and that you won't be happy, and that you won't have joy, and that your kids won't like you, and you won't like your kids, and all of those kind of things. Even though that's the major and exclusively the thing that we keep track of, balance sheets and income statements and all of those kinds of things. And so even though we all try to we need the money in order to sustain ourselves and to get the kind of freedom that we want to be able to, pursue the stuff that's really in our hearts, the system works against us because of the way that it values money. And so there is if you want to think about this new world in practical kind of terms, one of the two things that I want to talk to you about is that you have got to rethink the whole purpose, function, utility, utilization of money. I mean, in radical kind of terms. And so that's why this, you get kind of a mixed bag associated with this guaranteed minimum income process that the World Economic Forum and others are talking about. What they're trying to do is figure out a way to deal with all of these people in the bottom rungs that are going to get thrown out of jobs because the technology is going to take over. And so what's the answer? Government provides everybody with $25K or some other kind of thing a year, some basic stipend that no matter what you do, or you get it. And so you can always eat or something, and you can't eat much on $25,000 a year, by the way. And so maybe it'll have to be bigger than that. But the concept is that there's a floor that all of society maintains that keeps you to the place where that you can you don't have you if you choose not to, you don't have to worry about working, that you can pursue what you want to. There are all kinds of kind of potential issues on the upside and the downside associated with that concept. Some of the positive ones are that you almost certainly would eliminate a lot of crime and such, because people would not have to they would always have enough money to at least take care of their basic kind of needs. I suspect that you can make a case that a lot of drug problems, people are using drugs and are homeless and such because they have no other way in which to support themselves. And so drugs become an escape. Well, if you've got enough money to live on and you can have and buy food and so on, then there are experiments that have been done that show this is absolutely the truth. You give a bunch of homeless people $10,000 for a year. They did it in, I don't know, Seattle. I can't remember exactly where it was, somewhere on the West Coast. 85% of them or something like that are going to use that money in order to get themselves up to where they have a home and or a place to stay, and so they're not on the streets anymore. So it's really the money plays a very important role, but this is not easy. So it should be obvious, because there are a lot of you have acclimated, you have trained the smartest people in the world that money is everything, and they ought to get as much as they can, because one of these days you're going to die and you can't take it with you. And so you just really, everything kind of points toward all of that, and you would have to find a way to revalue the system. That is to say, change the underlying values of the system in a way that's quite doable, I think. I worked a good bit with Singapore, and I watched, admittedly, it's a small country, but I watched them decide that they were going to change the values of their children, and they were going to introduce competitiveness into the Asian mindset that really didn't like competitiveness, because they don't want to stand up, and everybody tries to stay to kind of together and everything. But the government of Singapore felt that it was important for the well-being and the future of Singapore that the services and the things that they provided as a society and as a country to the Asian region dictated and necessitated that they become competitive and creative in ways that most Asian cultures are not. And so they began a re-engineering of their whole education system and their social system, so that they would introduce that into the system, and that they would get quickly get a generation of young people who were now doing competitive sports other than just ping pong, which turned out to be was about the only competitive sport that was in Singapore at that time. So they were trying to introduce basketball and football and so on. So the point is that it's possible to do this. You could do this, but this is not easy. But it is central. It's one of the two big stakes that are kind of hold down the new tent for the new world where we're going. Now, the other one is secrecy. If you think about it, and let's say that you had, maybe the society at large said that no one should hunger, and everyone should have their basic needs met, and we're going to do that because we're going to give everybody $45,000 a year. I don't know, let's say $50,000 a year, which is far, let's presume that with the economy that exists then is enough to easily kind of take care of you and so on. And there are all kinds of creative and innovative things that you wanted to do, or maybe you just want to go fishing or something. I don't know. But in any case, what we're looking for here, remember, we're on a track going toward a new world. And that track is guaranteed, going up at a 45-degree angle. This is not one of these kind of making little progress, 3% a year kind of things. This is going screaming for the sky. And the way that is denominated, that track going up there is denominated with ideas, new ideas, if you think about it. this place up here is the aggregate of all of the new ideas that got you up to that new plateau, to that new world. So what you really want to do, if you're in any kind of a position to influence this whole thing and this process, is that you want to open up the extraordinary kind of resources and capabilities of as many people as possible to generate as many new ideas and new capabilities and inventions and discoveries as you can, because then you in the most efficient way, get as much out of this process, and you lubricate the whole process of going up to this new world, right? I mean, you don't get a new world without any new ideas, because it just stays the same as it was before. So the whole thing is about ideas. It's about the problem with the present system is that what we have is rampant secrecy laced throughout our whole system. And it it runs and I don't have the answer to this, but this is a really interesting thing to think about, and I'd encourage you to think about it a little bit. Because, on one hand, you want the incentives that'll allow people to, like I say, to be creative and find the solutions and the new tools and capabilities for us going forward. And you can't do that without incentivizing them in some way. I mean, they're going to have to work hard, presumably, in order to do that. They're not going to be the guys who are sitting down at the $50,000 level that are just living off of the dole. And so you've got to have some kind of way that says, well, we'll take care of the basic kind of needs. But then if you really do superior kind of things and you make a big contribution, and now you're into the space that says, what is that contribution, and what are the metrics you use? And you're not using money, but you're using other kind of things. So if you really were trying to be all that you can be, then what you'd really want is to be able to have access to as much information and cross-fertilization so that the whole system just becomes highly creative and productive. And you can't do that at all the way in terms that it's possible to do it because of the secrecy that's built into the system. Now, it's obviously there are proprietary things that people develop right now so that they can get an advantage over others. And that basic kind of notion is kind of threaded throughout the government and absolutely, pervasive, in terms that if you haven't ever worked for the government, you don't even begin to understand how everything is tied to secrecy, and we're not giving anything up because the Chinese might find it out or whatever, or it's a national security issue. And then, of course, secrecy, the way it's implemented and used right now, is used to cover up mistakes and positions and political kind of stuff and other kind of things. And so it's not like you needed to keep this secret because of some security issue or something, but you keep the secret because you'd be embarrassed or something, or any of a number of kind of issues along that line. The system has become so extraordinarily overburdened that my friend Robert David Steele, who's not with us anymore, used to say that literally, I mean, he had done some calculus to kind of figure it out and said that something like 96% of the things that are classified by the government have no need to be classified and should be in the open, and they only need to classify about 4% of the stuff that they do right now. Now, if you think about that statement, the imagery that you've got to generate in your mind is this big suppression effort that's going on with extraordinary sophistication and breadth that's never ending and so on, to keep information, useful information, away from everybody else for some presumed benefit that that somebody's trying to keep it away from. And that, by the way, turns out to be, as we all know, all kinds of discoveries and inventions and things that could be very beneficial and valuable to all of humanity, but that the national security apparatus has decided that they have to suppress it so that the Russians or somebody else doesn't get it. And so we're the only ones that can get it. And so then they have secret programs all over and up in the air and all over the ground and in holes, underground facilities and everything that are all designed to keep secrets from everybody. Now, I don't know how you resolve this. You'd have to sit down with some smart people and spend some time trying to think of the way to do this. But there are, but what you have to remember, as I suggested earlier, is that this comes to a head and it becomes an active subject of engagement to resolve after we have gone through this kind of crucible of extraordinary events that are lined up here for the next 2 or 3 or 4 years. That, you know, Cliff High says results in the breakup of the United States of America. So our country doesn't even exist, and we've had to reconfigure ourselves. I mean, just the magnitude of just that sentence is mind-boggling, of what the complexity and the dynamics of how you get it all together and how you do that. And so there's an amazing kind of catalytic experience, common catalytic experience that sits in the back of everybody's brain, coming out of the back end of this thing, saying, wait a second, we're not going to do that again. So there is an incentive to try to solve this problem. And when you have incentives, then and you can get creativity around it because people got, you know, there's a push, there's a reason to do this. It's not just a kind of an intellectual experiment. So those, it seems to me, are, if you solve that, if you're able to resolve these kinds of things and come up with a creative new way to deal with kind of the money side of this thing and the secrecy side of the stuff, then what you have done is effectively turned on the spigots of the flow of creativity and so on for this new world, for this emergent new world. And then it flows, you know, on the next level higher, then it just works its way across all kind of new energy sources and other kind of things that all then enable continue in far more kind of, you know, interesting and powerful and effective ways contribute to the whole system just becoming very, very productive. So the picture I painted for you is kind of intriguing if you stay with it a little bit, because what you can see if you start to solve those two problems, you could easily see that you've built yourself, because they're so radical and different from the way we operate now, that you could see that you could build a platform that could be the basis for 1,000 years of peace. If everybody wasn't struggling to get enough money to eat, and that there was plenty for everyone, then you'd eliminate a lot of the conflicts, as I've suggested. A lot of crime would go away, and you wouldn't have any reason to go and have wars with other kinds of folks, because everybody'd be getting, you'd be doing okay. You'd be doing fine. If everything's fine, why do you want to go fight somebody, right? Well, if everything's okay and you're happy, you're not interested in all of the dysfunctional aspects of the present way human beings gonna live. And so there's other things as well. There's that come with this, because they're part of the increased consciousness, this expanded awareness. And so if you know how to manifest and so on, and you can see auras, and somebody's background, and you can tell if they're telling the truth and how they're feeling just by looking at them, then now you're getting rid of a whole lot of advertising, and politicians can't operate the way they have in the past, and they're people can't lie the way they used to, and so on. Suddenly you're into other kinds of wonderful kind of things. But and if you can't change the money thing without a new idea of an economy, and so the economy would have to work in a different kind of way. There'd probably be a lot of bartering and other kinds of ways. You would absolutely have to expand it all up, like I suggested, so that that you had this spectrum. You could essentially monetize, if you would. You could monetize anything. If you had a friend who was always fun to be with and he told a lot of jokes, you could make him a 7 on a 1 to 10 scale, and somehow that would, in this new economic system, that would he'd do better than a guy who was only a 5, because the guy that was a 5, you know how that works. You can see the basic idea. I don't know exactly how you pull it off, but there's this whole thing where wonderful people who are very successful or helpful to the community, maybe you go out and you clean up in your block in your neighborhood, and you get another point or two or something. I don't know. I'm certainly not suggesting that this is a social metric system like China or anything like that. But there's a broader kind of way in which you can value things. So it's a fascinating kind of exercise to try to think through how some of these things. Education is another one, and I don't want to spend the time to talk about it now, but you just really have to redo how you treat the kids, and energy and transportation, and just the legal system would all need to change, because it's all built upon the presumption of human nature that is not the case out in this new world, so on. But so that will give you a little food for thought and the ability to think a little bit more about the future, because in effective ways, because if we could solve those two problems and come up with some cool ideas, then we could start to build it and translate it across to many other areas as well. So thanks. If you like this, please share it. And please like it, and please join, and we'll make sure that we get you more information about all of these things going into the future. Take care.